The Galactic Empire had conquered countless worlds, bending species after species to its rule. To them, Earth was just another primitive planet, a minor nuisance in the grand scheme of their expansion. Their fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, massive warships blotting out the stars, casting long shadows over the blue planet below. Admiral Kale stood aboard the Imperator, the flagship of the Imperial fleet. His yellow eyes burned with contempt as he looked at the display before him, showing Earth's surface in stunning detail. The humans had no planetary defenses visible, no large fleet to resist them. It would be another simple conquest. His communication officers worked quickly, sending a single transmission down to the planet. People of Earth, you are hereby annexed by order of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender all military forces, resources, and leadership to the authority of the Emperor. Refusal will result in total annihilation. You have one planetary cycle to comply. Kale smirked, already anticipating the usual response. Panic, desperation, begging. He had seen it countless times before. Yet, as the moments passed, no reply came. The humans were silent. His officers confirmed the message had been received. Yet Earth made no attempt to communicate. That was unusual. Minutes turned to hours. The Empire's demand should have been met with frantic negotiations, fearful pleading, or even misguided defiance. But there was only silence. Then, at last, a single transmission came through. It was text-based. No video, no voice, just two simple words. Flee now. Cal's smirk faltered. He read the message again. There was no explanation, no attempt to threaten, no desperate plea, just those two words. Flee now. He scoffed. Are they serious? He muttered, shaking his head. Pathetic. They think empty warnings will make us leave. His officers chuckled, some murmuring about human arrogance, others suggesting this was simply fear disguised as defiance. Kale dismissed the message with a wave of his hand. They had their chance to surrender. Ready the fleet. We begin orbital bombardment at once. The warships moved into position, massive cannons locking onto major cities across the planet. The order was given. Energy weapons flared to life, unleashing blinding beams of destruction toward the surface. But something impossible happened. Nothing hit. Every energy blast, every kinetic projectile disappeared before reaching the ground. Sensors showed that the weapons had fired correctly, but the shots were simply gone, as if the very laws of physics had changed. Confusion spread across the fleet. Officers scrambled for explanations. Defensive shields. Someone suggested. A distortion field. Another guessed. But no planetary shields had been detected. No known technology could simply erase an attack. Cal's grip on the command console tightened. This was not normal. He ordered a second volley. Again, the firepower of an entire Imperial fleet was unleashed upon Earth. And again, it vanished. Then, without warning, the ship's systems flickered. Lights dimmed, alarms blared. The crew shouted as control panels reset themselves. The entire fleet seemed to tremble as if something was pressing against reality itself. One of the warships, the Vanguard, suddenly stopped responding. It drifted, lifeless, engines offline. Then, before anyone could react, it was simply gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just erased from existence. The bridge of the Imperator was silent. The officers, once so arrogant, were now pale with fear. Kale felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping into his chest. Dread. A new message arrived from Earth. Again, only text. This was your only warning. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Kale felt uncertain. Earth was not what they had expected. And deep inside, a terrible realization settled into his mind. They should have fled. The fleet hung in orbit, silent and motionless. Fear had spread through the ranks like a sickness. No one spoke, no one dared to breathe too loudly. The Vanguard was gone. Not destroyed, not in pieces, simply erased, as if it had never existed. Admiral Cale's hands clenched into fists. This was impossible. Nothing in the Empire's long history of conquest had prepared them for this. He turned to his officers, his voice sharp. "Find out what happened. Now." The crew scrambled. Scanners ran over and over again, searching for any sign of an energy signature, a gravitational anomaly, anything that could explain what had just happened. But the readings made no sense. There was no sign of a weapon, no interference, no foreign energy source. It was as if the ship had simply ceased to be. Cale refused to believe it. "Prepare an invasion force. Ground troops, fighters. We'll take the planet by force if our weapons are useless." His officers hesitated. "Admiral, are you sure that's wise?" one of them dared to ask. Cale's eyes burned with fury. "You think we should tuck our tails and run?" He took a step forward, his imposing figure towering over the officer. "We are the Galactic Empire. We do not retreat from primitives. Deploy the ground forces. Now." Reluctantly, the fleet obeyed. Transport ships detached from the warships, descending toward Earth. The elite Imperial shock troopers, some of the most feared warriors in the galaxy, were aboard. They had conquered countless worlds. Earth would be no different. Or so they thought. As the ships entered the atmosphere, something changed. Pilots suddenly lost control of their controls. The instruments showed they were still flying, but they could no longer maneuver. The engines still roared, but their velocity was locked. Panic filled the comms. "Control, this is Strike Team Alpha. Something is wrong. We're being pulled down." Cale watched from the bridge as dozens of ships fell. Not crashed, but fell. Slow, controlled, as if unseen hands were dragging them to the ground. He expected explosions, fiery wreckage upon impact. There were none. The ships landed safely, their doors unlocked by themselves. And then, the screaming began. The audio feeds from the troops filled the command deck. Terrified voices, soldiers shouting, weapons firing, but not at anything visible. "We need backup." "I don't." "RG. Weapons aren't doing anything. I don't even see what we're fighting." "No, no, no." Silence. Cale's blood ran cold. The entire strike force, thousands of soldiers, were gone. Their vitals, once flashing across the monitors, all flatlined at once. Then, the last transmission came through. A single voice, barely a whisper, shaking with fear. "We should have left." The line went dead. Cale stared at the screen. His officers looked to him, waiting for orders. But for the first time in his life, he had none. Then the final message from Earth arrived. A single word. "Leave." Cale no longer felt pride, no longer felt power. For the first time in his life, he felt something no Imperial Admiral had ever felt before. The bridge of the Imperator was silent. No one dared to speak. No one moved. Admiral Cale's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. An entire strike force. Gone. Not a single distress beacon, not a single body, not a single shot from an enemy. Just gone. His officers stared at him, waiting, hoping for an answer, a way out of this nightmare. But what could he say? That this was still a simple conquest, that they could still win. Even he couldn't convince himself of that anymore. Then the ship's lights flickered. Cale froze. The crew stiffened. The Imperator, the Empire's most advanced warship, was failing. Systems glitched. Screens filled with static. Warning sirens blared. "Admiral, we're losing control of primary systems." A technician shouted. "Weapons offline." Another voice cried. "Engines unresponsive." Cale spun toward his chief engineer. "What's happening? Are we under attack?" The engineer's face was pale. His fingers danced over the controls, trying desperately to find an explanation. But all he could do was shake his head. "Sir, there's no attack. No outside interference. It's like the ship is shutting down on its own." Cale gritted his teeth. Impossible. Then something else happened. The massive viewports that overlooked the stars faded to black. Not darkness, blackness. Like something had swallowed the light. Then a shape appeared. No, not a shape. A silhouette. A towering humanoid figure standing in space, staring at them. It had no features, no expression, only an empty void where a face should have been. A wave of raw terror spread through the crew. Some staggered back. Others whispered prayers to gods that had never listened before. Cale felt his hands tremble. His mind screamed that this wasn't possible. Nothing could exist like this. Nothing could just stand there, in the vacuum, watching them. Then, the comms came alive. Not with words, with whispers. Thousands of voices speaking at once. Some pleading, some sobbing, some screaming. But none of them were human. Cale's breath caught in his throat. These weren't voices of his crew. These were voices of the lost. The Vanguard's crew. The strike force. All of them. We should have left. The whispers cried. Cale's vision blurred. His mind felt like it was being peeled apart. He clutched his head, gritting his teeth, trying to block out the endless voices. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The ship's systems returned. The viewports cleared. The figure was gone. And a final message flashed across every screen on the Imperator. This is your last chance. Cale gasped for breath, his body trembling. He turned to his officers, his voice hoarse. Prepare the fleet. We're leaving. No one questioned him. No one protested. Because they all knew the truth now. Earth was never meant to be conquered. It was a warning. And they had just barely survived it. The Imperial fleet turned, engines roaring to life as they prepared to retreat from Earth's orbit. No one spoke of honor. No one spoke of conquest. Survival was the only thought left. Admiral Cale stood on the bridge, his hands still trembling. He had seen wars. He had crushed rebellions. But nothing compared to what had happened here. The whispers still echoed in his mind. The figure in the void still lingered in his vision. His officers worked quickly, their movements stiff with fear. The moment the order to leave had been given, no one had hesitated. They all felt it, the presence, the warning. Sir, all ships report readiness for hyperspace jump. Cale exhaled. Initiate jump. Now. The countdown began. 10 seconds. But then, the stars vanished. The ship trembled. Lights flickered again. This time, the blackness outside wasn't empty. It was watching them. A voice, deep and hollow, filled the bridge. You were warned. Cale's blood turned to ice. He had not spoken. Neither had his crew. The voice had come from nowhere. Then the screams started. Not from his crew. From the fleet. Ship after ship, their distress calls blared across the command deck. Something's pulling us back. No. What is? RJ. We're not jumping. We're falling. FALIT. Cale turned to the screens, and his breath left his body. The fleet wasn't leaving. They were being dragged down. Toward Earth. Not in flames. Not in destruction. Slowly. Carefully. Like hands pulling them into a grave. One by one, warships vanished into the clouds below. No explosions. No wreckage. Just silence. Cale gritted his teeth. All power to engines. We're getting out of here. The crew obeyed, panic setting in. The Imperator burned bright with thruster fire, pushing against the invisible force pulling them down. Sir, it's not working. The main screen flickered again. A single word appeared. Stay. Cale's heart pounded. No, I refuse. His mind screamed at him to fight, to push back, to resist whatever nightmare had taken hold of reality. Then, a shadow passed through the bridge. Not outside, not on the screens, inside. It moved through his officers, through their bodies, through their very souls. Their faces twisted in horror, their mouths open in silent screams. Then they collapsed. Kale staggered back. His crew was gone. All of them. Erased. He was alone. The whispers returned. This time, they spoke to him directly. "You will carry our message." Kale gasped for breath, his legs weak, his body shaking. Then, just as suddenly, it was over. The ship jerked forward. The engines responded. The pull vanished. Kale fell to his knees, eyes wide. His crew, his entire fleet, gone. He was the only survivor. The Imperator shot into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. But Kale knew the truth. He had not escaped. He had been allowed to leave. And now he carried something far worse than defeat. He carried the warning. "You said." Admiral Kale sat alone in his private chambers aboard the Imperator, staring at his reflection in the darkened viewport. The silence was unbearable. His fleet gone. His crew erased. The mighty Imperial Armada reduced to nothing in the span of minutes, and he had survived. Not by skill, not by strength. He had been chosen. The whispers still lingered in his mind, the final words of that unseen force repeating like a curse. "You will carry our message." A message to whom? The Emperor, the Senate, the entire empire. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of his desk. His entire body felt wrong, like something unseen was watching him from the corners of the room, just outside his vision. He refused to turn his head. He refused to see if something was there. He wasn't alone anymore. His console beeped, breaking the oppressive silence. It was an incoming transmission from Imperial High Command. He swallowed hard and accepted the call. The Emperor's hologram appeared before him. Regal, unmoving, unforgiving. "Admiral Kale," the Emperor's voice was cold. "Explain yourself." Kale opened his mouth, but nothing came out. How could he explain? That an unseen force had erased an entire armada. That Earth was not what they thought it was. That something had spoken to him. He took a deep breath. The invasion failed. The Emperor's expression darkened. Failed. Kale forced himself to meet the holographic gaze. We were not defeated by warships, not by weapons, not by human resistance. We were consumed, taken. I am the only survivor. The chamber fell into deep silence. The Emperor studied him carefully, then asked, "And Earth?" Kale hesitated. His throat was dry. Finally, he spoke the only truth he knew. "It let me go." The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "It?" Kale nodded, his hands gripping the chair to stop them from shaking. "Earth is not what we thought. It is not just a planet. It is not just a people. It is something else. And it warned us. If we return, if we make the same mistake." He swallowed. "We will cease to exist." For the first time, the Emperor remained silent. A shadow of unease flickered across his face, just for a moment. Then his gaze hardened. "You expect me to believe such madness?" Kale clenched his jaw. He could see it. The Emperor wanted to dismiss his words, to label him as a coward, a failure. But even he could sense the weight of what Kale was saying. Then, another voice entered the call. "Perhaps we should listen." Kale turned sharply. A new hologram had appeared beside the Emperor. An older man, his uniform marked with the insignia of the Empire's High Council. Grand Strategist Lorien. Unlike the Emperor, Lorien's expression was unreadable. "Admiral Kale does not strike me as a man who fears battle," Lorien said, his voice even. "If he is afraid, then perhaps the Empire should be as well." The Emperor frowned. "You suggest we abandon Earth, that we retreat." Lorien studied Kale for a long moment. "I suggest we take this seriously." The Emperor said nothing. His pride and ambition warred with the possibility that something greater than the Empire had made its presence known. Finally, he turned back to Kale. "You will not speak of this to anyone outside this room," he said, his voice like ice. "You will remain on the Imperator until further orders." Kale let out a slow breath. He knew what this meant. He was being contained, silenced. But that was fine, because deep down, he already knew the truth. They could ignore the warning. They could pretend it wasn't real. But sooner or later, the Empire would learn. And when they did, Earth would be waiting. Admiral Kale remained in his chambers, trapped in a silence that felt heavier than any prison cell. The Imperator drifted alone in deep space, cut off from the Empire's fleets. No communication, no orders, just waiting. The Emperor had made his decision. He wasn't going to announce defeat. He wasn't going to spread fear. He was going to prepare. Kale knew what that meant. They were coming back. He clenched his fists. The whispers still lingered in his mind, the warning that had been etched into his very soul. If you return, you will cease to exist. And yet, he knew the Empire. They would not be scared into submission. They would not accept the unknown. They would not stop until they forced Earth to kneel, or until they burned trying. The door to his chamber slid open. Grand Strategist Lorien entered, his expression unreadable as always. The man moved slowly, as if measuring every step. Kale stood, stiffly. "You have news." Lorien nodded. "The Emperor has decided." Kale already knew the answer, but he still asked. "Another invasion?" Lorien sighed. "Not yet. First, they will test the waters. Probes, covert teams, silent observation." He paused. "Then the full force of the Empire." Kale gritted his teeth. "It won't work. We don't understand what we're dealing with." Lorien tilted his head slightly. "That's why we're sending something different first." Kale narrowed his eyes. "What?" Lorien took a deep breath. "Me." Kale's breath caught. "You?" Lorien nodded. "A diplomatic vessel, under the pretense of negotiation. The Empire does not negotiate, of course, but the Emperor believes we may gain something by studying them up close." Kale shook his head. "You think they'll allow it?" Lorien gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "If they don't, then we will learn something just as valuable, won't we?" Kale knew what that meant. If the ship vanished, if Lorien and his crew simply ceased to exist, then the Empire would have an answer. And it would not be one they could afford to ignore. Kale exhaled slowly. "You're making a mistake." Lorien shrugged. "Perhaps." Then he leaned in slightly. "Or perhaps we will finally see what lurks beneath Earth's surface." Kale met his gaze, searching for any hesitation. There was none. Lorien wasn't just going on a mission. He was walking into the unknown with open eyes. Kale sighed. "I assume you want my advice." Lorien nodded. Kale hesitated. The warning still echoed in his mind. "Flee now. Do not return." He closed his eyes. He could still feel it. The thing in the void. The presence that had spoken to him, not with words, but with something deeper. Finally, he opened his eyes and met Lorien's gaze. "Don't go." Lorien chuckled. "That's not advice, Admiral. That's fear." Kale clenched his jaw. "Then take this instead. Do not assume Earth is what it seems. If they let you land, if they let you see their world, then understand this." He took a deep breath. "They want you to." Lorien studied him for a moment, then nodded. Message received. He turned and walked toward the door. But before leaving, he glanced back. "Let's hope you're wrong, Admiral." The doors slid shut behind him. Kale sat back down, rubbing his temples. "No, Lorien. I hope I'm wrong too." But deep down, he knew the truth. He wasn't. The Imperial diplomatic vessel, Vindicator, cut through the darkness of space, its sleek black hull reflecting the distant light of a nameless star. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, only Grand Strategist Lorien, his hand-picked diplomatic team, and an elite squad of intelligence officers. They were here under the banner of peace, but peace was a lie. Lorien had been given one mission: study Earth, uncover its secrets, report back. The Empire did not accept mysteries. It destroyed them. As they approached the Sol system, the crew moved in tense silence. They had all heard the rumors, Kel's story, the vanishing armada, the unseen force that had spared only one man. None of them believed it. Lorien sat in the command chair, staring at the blue-green planet that had defied the greatest military power in the galaxy. It looked so normal. But that was the danger, wasn't it? A transmission came through. Unidentified Imperial vessel. This is Earth Defense Network. State your intent immediately. Lorien leaned forward. This is Grand Strategist Lorien of the Imperial Council. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic engagement with Earth's governing body. Silence. Then, understood, Grand Strategist. Follow the designated approach vector. Any deviation will be considered hostile. Lorien raised an eyebrow. No hesitation. No fear. They treated the Empire as if it was just another visitor. The Vindicator entered Earth's orbit, and the sight below stunned the crew. Massive orbital platforms, defense grids, shipyards far beyond anything the Empire had predicted. Humanity had been preparing. Lorien's fingers tightened on the armrests. This isn't a backwater species scrambling for survival, he muttered. This is something else. They landed in a sprawling complex, where a delegation awaited them. No soldiers, no weapons. Only a single figure stepped forward. A woman in a crisp black uniform, her gaze as cold as deep space itself. Welcome to Earth, Grand Strategist, she said. I am Director Helena Vos, representing the Unified Terran Authority. Lorien studied her. No fear, no arrogance, only certainty. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to warn him. Shall we begin? Vos asked. Lorien exhaled. The Empire had come to study Earth. But now, as he met the Director's unwavering gaze, he realized something. It was Earth that was studying them. You said 8. ChatGPT said. Lorien sat across from Director Helena Vos in a sterile, brightly lit conference room deep within Earth's governmental complex. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, a room designed not for diplomacy, but for control. There were no Imperial guards, no security detail, only silence. Lorien folded his hands. I must commend your people, Director. Most species crumble at the mere presence of the Empire. Yet, here you sit, unshaken. Vos tilted her head slightly. Should we be afraid? Lorien smiled. The Empire does not threaten lightly. Vos leaned forward, her expression unchanged. Neither do we. The words hung in the air like a blade poised above his neck. Lorien kept his composure. Let us not waste time with bravado. The Emperor sent me here to establish a channel of understanding. Vos exhaled softly. Understanding. She shook her head. The Empire already understands us. You just don't accept what you see. Lorien's fingers twitched. Then tell me, Director, what is it that we fail to understand? Vos studied him for a moment, then tapped a control panel on the table. A holographic display erupted between them, showing a detailed star map, not of the Empire, but of the entire galactic sphere. Red markers flickered across dozens of star systems. Lorien's breath caught. Imperial fleets, secret bases, logistics hubs. Vos met his gaze. We see everything, Grand Strategist. We have for a long time. Lorien swallowed. Impossible. Your technology. Vos cut him off. Your mistake was assuming we were alone. Lorien stiffened. What are you saying? Vos tapped the console again. The image shifted. Not to a map. To a recording. A battlefield littered with the wreckage of an Imperial armada. The missing fleets, the ones that had vanished into the void. And amidst the debris, something moved. Lorien's blood turned to ice. A single human stood on the ruined hull of an Imperial dreadnought, alone, unarmored, and yet the very fabric of space bent around them. The recording zoomed in. Lorian's breath caught in his throat. The figure turned and looked directly at the camera. There was no expression, no hostility, only a simple message, transmitted directly into the recording. "We warned you." The footage ended. Silence returned. Lorian couldn't speak. Vaz watched him carefully. "Tell your Emperor what you've seen here today." She stood. "The Empire still has a choice." Lorian slowly rose, his mind racing. "And if we make the wrong one?" Vaz met his gaze, utterly calm. "Then there won't be an empire left to choose." Lorian swallowed hard. For the first time in his life, he believed her.